Karen.
Hey, Skip, Aaron here.
You hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I'm actually
Good.
hearing myself coming through your speakers a little bit.
Well, Aaron said he could do, my wife and I are talking about the PowerPoint. I emailed it to you.
Yeah, I'm downloading that right now. And so let me take a look here. I should be able to load that up. I haven't used Zoom in a year, but used to be. It was a pretty straightforward process. Let's see. Although I don't know, am I in here as a co-host at this point or just a guest? I think I'm just a guest.
Let's see, how do I do that?
That's a good question. I don't know. Do you see?
Oh, under more, click more.
Yeah, because I can't see any of that.
Okay, that's what it's telling me. So it says make host.
There we go. I know usually it's a simple thing like that. So, all right, now I'm a host.
Yeah.
All right, so
I'm learning, trial and error here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I got to figure out how to get to controls to load the PowerPoint. Remember, it wasn't hard
I still haven't
before.
seen Laurel has signed up. You know her?
Yeah,
You know
Lori.
her, right?
Lori, yeah, she responded to me last night. But I know she's coming. Advanced sharing options. Let's see, one per multiple can share simultaneously. Advanced sharing options. Is there a way to load it, or do you have to share screen? Might just be a share screen on this one. Because right now I'm not seeing a way to actually load it. I can't remember what we did last year. It's not there. Choose filter settings. Yeah, because the share screen button down at the bottom. So a lot of times what people do is they pull up the PowerPoint and they just share screen and they share their screen.
Right.
And yeah, I don't see any way to actually load the PowerPoint in. That's strange.
Because I'm wondering if it might be better for her to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a matter of sharing screen, it would make sense for her to do it because then she'll be a presenter anyway, and then she can drive the slides and everything.
Right.
On her own screen. Well, both of them can, That's funny, yeah. Do we have Zoom or Zoom Pro, by the way?
Well, it's purchased. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so I think that's Zoom Pro, I think. Because I just remember, because when we did that 2 years ago, we had to upgrade to Zoom Pro for like the amount of length of time we needed and the number of guests. There were caps on them for the free version.
Right.
So yeah, so if you purchased it, I think that is Zoom Pro.
Yeah,
I was looking through my notes.
So.
Yeah, that's got to be it then. Yeah. Yeah, they must have to just share their slides. They must not have an upload function. That's weird. Easy enough. It says there are 3 participants. Who else is showing up here? Oh, Ed Hoare, who's not in yet. He's in the waiting room. I see. And so, yeah, we're under participants. That's where you hit more, right? And that's where you can
yeah.
Change things around. Make host.
Do you know Ed?
Name. I do not. The name sounds familiar.
Oh. Because he said he knows how to do Zoom. So.
Marianne is here as well.
All right. So
let's let her in.
Now I'm not
her.
Okay.
I think now because I'm host, right? There's no way to have a co-host. That seems strange.
Yeah. I didn't mean to make you the host. but the co-host.
Yeah, I don't see a co-host option.
Let
Hi,
me see.
Marianne.
Hi,
How are you?
Hey,
okay. Let me
Good.
say, I'm giving blood at 2:15 this afternoon, so that'll be the real relaxation of the day.
I
Turn on-
keep saying I need to do that. Yeah, that's strange. Yeah, because like we use WebEx, Skip, at work, and there you can make someone a host, a co-host, or a presenter. And here I only see the option to make one person the host.
yeah.
Seems odd.
Yeah, normally we've had co-hosts. So I'm not sure why. See here, it
Yeah.
says if I click on more on my name, it says I can reclaim host, but I don't, I want co-host. So
Yeah, maybe we just bounce it back and forth. You can claim it, and then whenever you want to pass it to me, you can pass it to me and make me host. And then we can pass it to Marianne and Lori. They can be hosts whenever they need to, and guess that would work,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
How I'm trying to adjust this lighting, but then now I figure it's going to be mostly it's going to be a PowerPoint, so it really doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's a little dark on your face,
Yeah.
but it's not too bad.
I can. That doesn't help. Around. Well, that's better.
Oh yeah, there, that definitely works better. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Sharing
So
options.
how many do you have in the waiting room at this point?
Just two. We have Corinne just came in, and then Ed.
Well,
Okay.
you could let Ed in and ask him any questions you have, because he volunteered to help with it. He says, I've been doing.
All right, let's do that. Can't hurt, right? We can go ahead and let them in.
Yeah.
Gives a chance people to be social.
Right.
Anyway, which everybody likes. Welcome, Ed. Welcome, Corinne. See, Ed is connecting to audio still.
Yeah, that's better, Marianne, that lighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Skip, do you want me to give the ball back to you for now, or do you want me to keep it for a second?
Well, no. Let's ask Ed. Ed, are you live now?
On my screen, it's saying he's connecting to audio still.
Okay. Yeah, see, his camera is muted.
It's down here. Yeah. Mute participants upon entry. They're allowed to unmute themselves. Yep. Ask all to unmute. Yep. Okay. Hi, Corinne.
I hear you.
Hi, Corinne.
Hi, Marianne. Looking forward to this. I'm
Well-
on really early.
There's
There's
Ed.
Ed.
Wonderful.
Hi, Ed. We have a couple questions for you. Skip said you volunteered to answer a question about Zoom for us. How are you?
Okay.
Yeah, we were just wondering, because in the past, we always were able to set up a host and a co-host, and now we're only seeing the option to have one person designated as a host. Do you know anything about that?
It's possible you have to register the co-hosts ahead of time.
Okay.
There's a button to click on and you list them, and then Zoom sends them an email and they reply.
Okay.
I'm
Now that you say that, I remember that because I did that in the past.
okay.
About a year ago. I remember there was a separate link for hosts.
And
So,
then
okay, that answers
it
that.
appears to be whoever signs on via the account. The first one in is the host, and anybody else that signs in is a co-host. The documentation sort of implies that you can appoint a co-host, but I'm not sure how that's accomplished.
Okay. That completely fits with what I remember now that you say that. So we can explore that offline some other time here then this week. So for now, we'll just pass it back and forth. That'll work fine, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, what about, let's see, muting everyone?
Yeah. So I just looked, there's the 3 dots there next to that. Everyone is set to mute upon entry right now. So they would have to intentionally unmute themselves to speak. And so if there's background noise, we can hit mute all. If like, sometimes people don't realize they're walking in their kitchen or something, making noise, then we can mute everyone and then have whoever's speaking come off mute. So
yeah,
that'll work.
So, and you can see all that right now as the host, right?
Yes, I can. And here I can go ahead and pass it back to you as well. If I can remember how. Let's see, more make host there. I'm going to pass that back to you as host. Now you should be able to see all that.
Okay.
It's probably generally good to have everybody muted while they're not interacting.
Right. Well, and in fact, we use the chat for questions rather than the voice. So we just keep everybody muted and tell them to use the chat room, and then we scroll through and do the questions. So Aaron and I and Marianne and Lori will stay unmuted. And I'm still not seeing any sign of Lori. That's her name is Lori, right? It's Laurel on the.
Yeah, right. She goes by Lori.
Okay.
It's possible she may be teaching this hour and getting out like
That could be. She might be.
10 till noon.
Yeah.
That could be because she might be heading back to her office or something right now.
Right. Okay. Well, Ed, you said you've done this a lot before, right? So
I've Zoomed a lot. I don't know as I've ever done a webinar with 40 people visiting and one talking.
yeah. Well, okay. So who's going to start first in the presentation?
Lori.
Okay, so we need to wait for her to get in. And we've got 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So we're okay in that regard.
Yep. I said, I know she responded to me last night, so I know she has remembered that it's going on and everything. So I would suspect, Marianne, you're probably right. She's probably on her way back.
She's dependable. You don't have to worry about her.
Oh, yeah.
But if for some reason she is greatly delayed, I could start. The sequence is much better her to me, but rather than having people, we don't even need to worry about it. She'll be here.
Yeah.
And we figured out what to do with the PowerPoint, how to get that up, right?
Right. There's just the share screen button there in the bottom. And so you would just hit share screen and then
you click on the program that has the presentation in it. Don't share the whole screen, just share the program that has it.
Right, good point.
Yeah.
And only the host, it looks like it's set up, you have it set, so only the host is able to share. So as soon as we transfer host responsibility to Lori, she should be able to share the screen, her screen, and click on that particular program, right, PowerPoint.
Does she also have a PowerPoint?
Don't know.
The program on her computer, you mean?
Well, PowerPoint, like you've got a PowerPoint, so Lori also have a PowerPoint.
If she
Yeah.
expects to use it, yes.
Yeah. So,
Hello.
and you,
It's not-
he's, I guess, has used PowerPoint. I mean, has used Zoom a lot.
Whether everybody gets to share or not is an option. So if it's awkward to pass it back and forth, you could probably just turn on the option that lets anybody share that wants to. Obviously, only
Yeah.
the presenter will want to.
Right. So Marianne, where is you sent me a copy of the PowerPoint, but
Yeah.
you have it on your computer also.
Yes. So what I understand I do is I'm on the screen, I'm on the Zoom call. You enable me to share my screen. And then I do that and I pull up my PowerPoint. on my
Okay. So you've done this before then.
Yeah. It's share screen,
So-
and then I guess I don't know how, once you've clicked share screen, it must come up with a choice of people you want to share it with. And you'll have done
Yeah.
that with Lori in the meantime. So for me, when it gets to be my turn, you do the same thing. You look for me in terms of sharing the screen with me, and then I will pull up my PowerPoint.
Yeah, well, we'll have to make you a host, I think, because
Yeah.
unless we can get in and change those settings, which I don't know if we can do that on the fly.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
already
know
noon.
if you can either.
But if we just
Mhm.
make whoever's presenting, we make you a host. And then you click where you'll see where it says screen share or share screen, a little
Yeah.
green at the very bottom. And that's where you click that. Then yeah, you can go then right in and say share PowerPoint and it'll display.
What you want to do is you want to put up PowerPoint before you start sharing. It doesn't have to be full screen, just get it running. Then
Mhm.
after the first screen you see after you click share is your choice of programs to share.
Right.
Okay. Some people
Good.
share the whole screen and it's not as effective.
Yeah.
Well, it's now 12. I'm gonna wait just a couple more minutes before admitting everybody. And then Aaron, what I thought I would do is just greet everyone on behalf of the Great Decisions Committee. And then I'll turn the host over to you
Okay.
so that sort of start the process. And we're kind of waiting for Lori to get in here. I still don't see her. See, we're up to 27 participants now. Oh, there she is, Lori. Okay, she's there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to admit her. There.
And thinking about it, Skip, you could probably just, as soon as you're done, just make Lori host. You don't really need to make me host because I'm just going to be introducing people. That way she can be loading
Yeah.
the PowerPoint while I'm introducing.
Okay. So Lori,
Hello.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, Lori.
hi.
Hi.
So we're going to start in about 2 minutes. And I'm going to make you host because you're going to present first, right?
Yes, that's right.
Or do you have a PowerPoint?
I do.
And you know how to do all that?
I do.
Oh, good. You're the one with the expertise. So we were talking through all this before you got here. And turns out we're not, Aaron and I are not co-hosts, but we have to go back and forth as hosts. So the question is, do you need to be co-host in order to make your PowerPoint presentation? Do you need
I
to be the host?
I think you can just enable screen sharing as host. And you don't have to
Okay.
make me a co-host necessarily, but if you go to screen sharing and click on it, I think it should say enable screen sharing for all participants.
Okay.
It's true. You may
Right,
do that
well,
as
we're
a
up to
host. That'd be good.
Are we ready to admit everyone then? It's 12:03.
I actually still can't share my screen yet. So I'm not
Okay.
enabled.
What if we just make you host?
Yeah.
That's
that
also
work?
fine. Then I'll be the
So-
one letting everyone in, but that's fine.
Or we could like maybe let
Yeah,
everyone in and then just flip it over to you even.
That's also good.
So that
And then
works good.
whoever's at the end of it will do the same for me to let me share my screen.
I'm pretty confident the host can permit everybody to share the screen.
Yeah.
That's the best solution. Then you don't have to have dual jobs.
Yeah, that's true. That would be good.
Okay, so who's going to be the host now?
If you want, you can throw that over to me if you want, and then I can try to do that. Or if you want to just pass it
Okay.
directly to Lori, but
I'll give it to you. So you'll have to let everybody in. I'm going to give you now the host. Let's see, more chat, stop video, make host. So here comes your hosthood.
all right. Now where
Okay.
is so far?
There you are.
All right,
Yeah,
admit all.
so-
Here we go. I'm admitting everyone now.
And everyone is muted except for us, right?
They should be.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Hmm.
Look for the share button.
I mean, I see a lot of people who are muted. Anyway, hello, everyone.
There.
That's the default, but it's not
Yeah.
continuing.
So Lori, you should be able to share now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, a quick announcement that this is the Great Decisions program on climate change. We have two really great speakers, and I'm really excited to hear from them. I'm new to the area. I've just been learning about them, and maybe Aaron, you might want to say just a couple more things about them and present them, and then let them get started.
Okay.
You since you know them, so go ahead.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. So let me just join in by saying good afternoon as well to everyone and add my own welcome to all of our guests today across the country, really, Nashville, Columbus, City of Delaware, and beyond. My name is Aaron Nicely, and I have a very distinct pleasure today to welcome and introduce two highly respected members of our Delaware community, Dr. Laurie Anderson and Marianne Gabel. So I'm actually doubly excited today because Laurie and Marianne are also friends and neighbors of mine, and I'm really excited to have you both with us today. So thank you. So some brief introductions, and I will get out of the way. So Dr. Laurie Anderson is a botanist and a professor of biology at Ohio Wesleyan University. She has been a leader in recent years in the development of a multi-institution climate research partnership that brings together climate scholars from private liberal arts colleges and universities across the country. Her academic research is into connections between climate change and the changing ecology of plant life, and she has really made some significant contributions to our understanding of climate change conditions on the ground. In addition, she has an impressive record of student development that's leading to a next generation of climate researchers, so we're very lucky to have her with us today. She's going to be providing us an overview of the urgent state of the global climate crisis and discussing the importance of taking action now to limit warming temperatures. So along with Laurie, we're also joined today by Marianne Gabel. She'll be concluding our session in the second half. And I will say, few people in our city have really contributed so fully and made such an impact as Marianne has in years with this community through her professional commitment to environmental protection, climate solutions, and sustainable development here in Delaware. She was chairwoman, of the board of the Nature Conservancy of Ohio for 3 years, and she co-founded back in 2014 the Delaware chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a national citizens interest group that advocates for carbon pricing as a way to reduce harmful greenhouse gas emissions. And so she will be discussing today the importance of having political will to get things done and to the importance of citizen engagement to affect policy changes that can lead to a more sustainable society. So just a couple quick housekeeping. This is the first of our series, so thank you all for coming. We will have a Q&A session after the presentation, so please hold your questions and then we can take those questions in the chat over on the right. We all came here to hear Laurie and Marianne, so let me get out of the way and just say, Laurie, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Erin, for that really kind introduction. And I'm really glad to be back with the Great Decisions series. I had the pleasure of speaking with you all several years ago, and this is an important issue and glad to be back revisiting it again. So I am going to share my screen, and I have some slides to start us off. And let's see, I'll start the slideshow mode so that it should be elevated a little bit. And as Erin said, I'll be starting out with the case for action, why we really need to be taking action on climate change right now. And I'm starting out with a graph of the atmospheric CO2 concentrations. As you probably know, CO2 is a key greenhouse gas that really absorbs a lot of heat energy that is radiating off the Earth's surface. The greenhouse gas, CO2, prevents it from escaping into space, and therefore our global temperature rises. And we have been tracking atmospheric CO2 on the island of Mauna Loa since 1957. And you can see the graph of CO2 here climbing steadily up to the current day concentration of 418 parts per million. I've also noted on the graph just how CO2 has changed in my own lifetime. So here's the date of my birth. Here's when I started my PhD in plant ecology. Here's when I started teaching at Ohio Wesleyan. So there's been quite a bit of change over my own lifetime, and it continues today. It's also important to realize that even though we've been attempting to slow our carbon emissions, in fact, we are emitting carbon more quickly than ever. This is also data from NOAA that I downloaded from the NOAA website literally yesterday. And these lines are showing the average rate of CO2 emission per year in parts per million per year across these various decades. So this line is for 1960 to 1970, 1970 to 1980, 1980 to 1990, and so on. And even though we've been attempting to reduce CO2 emissions, you can see that 2010 to 2020, we have the highest emissions that we've had over this time period, even though we did experience a drop in emissions due to the global pandemic in 2020. So our contributions to atmospheric CO2 continue to rise. We also have the additional issue of what we call the carbon bomb. This is carbon that is stored in dead organic material that is frozen in the permafrost. When permafrost melts, the various microbes that are naturally there, bacteria and fungi that do decomposition, they basically get activated as we warm up the soil. And then all of that frozen material is able to thaw and start decomposing and release additional carbon into the atmosphere. We estimate that permafrost stores 5 times as much carbon as humans have released by burning fossil fuels since 1850. And we're concerned about that being released as we melt the permafrost. And this is just a dramatic picture of a land slump resulting from melting permafrost. But we did have an alarming study in 2019 that showed basically the detonation of this carbon bomb. It's a slow explosion, but it is nevertheless a release of carbon into the atmosphere. And these little red dots are showing places where more carbon is being released than is being stored by plant growth in the Arctic. So that means we've had enough warming of the permafrost to release carbon into the atmosphere. We also have a concerning problem with global methane. Methane is CH4, it's one carbon atom with 4 hydrogens attached to it. And it's a gas that's also very, very good at absorbing CO2 from the absorbing heat as it radiates off the Earth's surface. In fact, it's a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. And as methane concentrations increase in the atmosphere, we continue to contribute to warming. There's been an interesting and concerning spike in our methane emissions since 2007. You can see that as kind of a kind of steeper slope to this line right here. And people are wondering if the warming of the planet is actually making the planet release more methane. And so I thought I'd do a little bit deeper dive into the techniques for looking at this, just because I think it's kind of cool, if unfortunate. So methane is made of carbon and hydrogen, and carbon as an atom usually has 6 protons and 6 neutrons in the atom nucleus. And we call that carbon 12 because 6 plus 6 is 12. Some forms of carbon that naturally occur in the environment actually have 7 neutrons, so they're a little bit heavier. We call these forms of carbon carbon 13, and we refer to these as isotopes. Carbon 14 is a radioactive isotope you might have heard of. Carbon 13 is naturally occurring, but it's simply heavy. It's not radioactive. And when bacteria decompose various types of organic matter, they don't like to use carbon 13 if they can. They will basically prefer not to use it, and they'll kind of leave it in the environment. And instead, they will use more carbon 12. So that means when we have bacteria that make methane, because we have a lot of bacteria that naturally produce it, when they decompose organic material in wetlands to generate methane, their methane has less C13 in it than methane from fossil fuels. And using this information, we can tell that the current methane in the atmosphere is coming quite a bit, you can see in this graph, from wetlands. And we also get some from fossil fuels in the earth. We've actually been able to track a lot of leakage of methane from our natural gas pipes. So that's another major source. But what's concerning about this increase in in methane from wetlands is that it means that as wetlands get warm, the bacteria get active and start releasing quite a bit of methane into the air. So we're getting a positive feedback loop where as the wetland water gets warmer, the bacteria get more active, they release more methane, methane traps more heat, which makes it get warmer, which makes the bacteria more active. And we get this positive feedback that's very concerning. So that's another thing that we're tracking right now in the scientific community. And we see this in just our straight up temperature data. This is a very recent headline. The past 7 years have been the hottest in recorded history. And there's an interesting video. I don't think just for the time concerns, I'll show it right now, but I wanted to point out to you that if you want to see an animation of the warming temperatures, NASA has some good resources for that. Also, we're seeing melting of the Greenland ice sheet, and this black line is looking at how much the melting of the Greenland ice sheet is contributing to sea level rise. That's what this black line is over time. These red and orange and blue lines are 3 different model predictions for how sea level rise will occur in the future. And you can see that these model predictions started back in, let's say 2005. And here's one that's more conservative. Here's one that's more extreme. So these are predictions that were made, and notice that our black line is basically tracking the highest prediction. So basically the Greenland ice sheet is following our worst case scenario prediction for how it's contributing to global sea level rise. And this is just another way of showing that same information over here. We have the long-term median amount of ice in Greenland. And then we have the melting that we observed in 2019. And you can see it really exceeds what our usual melting, what melting scenario is like. Because the Greenland ice sheet does, melt in the summer and freeze back in the winter. So melting itself, a little melting is not unusual, but the amount of melting we're seeing right now is really extreme. Since we have had a warmer climate, there's been a lot more evaporation of water into the atmosphere. And this has the weird effect of making dry places drier and wet places wetter. So strangely, in a warming world, we experience both increased drought and increased flood, depending on where you are. This is data from Australia's climate, and you can see the long-term temperature as this 0 line in the middle. We have the surface temperature being relatively cool relative to the long-term average up until about 1980, and then it starts exceeding, and we've now gone to a much warmer climate that has led to more drought because Australia is already fairly dry. So more evaporation leads to more drying of the land and of the vegetation, and that means more intense fire. So we know we've had very bad fire seasons in 2019, and that has continued in the Western US and in the Amazon region as well. And just to make it clear, the problem with fire is that actually fire that is low intensity tends to benefit ecosystems. It tends to clear out dead material. It can release nutrients into the soil. But that's if you have a low intensity fire where you see that actually a lot of the vegetation will survive the fire. Moderate intensity, you start to kill upper leaves in the canopy. High intensity fires basically char everything. So that's very problematic. So we're getting into a mode of having more high intensity fires in the landscape. And that's something that is going to be really impactful on our ecosystems. In 2019, we had scientists around the world declaring a climate emergency, and they published a paper that has all of these different trends that are from basically 1980 to 2020 or to 2019, showing concerning trends. And I won't go through all of these trends, but they're basically showing increases in carbon dioxide, methane, decreases in various ice sheets, increases in extreme weather, loss of funding and money to those weather events. So that really leads us to the place of needing to take action. And I just wanted to quote some things from the NASA website emphasizing the importance of taking action. When you see all of these data, it can really lead you to a place of saying, well, there's nothing we can do. You can start to feel kind of helpless. You can feel overwhelmed. And we already have committed ourselves to a certain amount of warming because the amount of CO2 that's already in the atmosphere. But I want to emphasize that it really matters keeping the CO2 levels and the warming to a moderate rather than extreme level. So for example, if we can keep our warming to more like 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we're at 1 right now, if we can keep it to 1.5, we're going to have basically 14% of the Earth's population exposed to severe heat waves at least once every 5 years at 1.5 degrees Celsius. At 2 degrees, that number jumps to 37% of the world's population. So it makes a big difference if we, keep ourselves at a moderate amount of warming at 1.5 as opposed to 2. Another comparison, if we keep ourselves to 1.5, about 184 to 270 million fewer people will be exposed to increased water scarcity than at 2. So it really matters. It really matters to people's lives and their quality of life. At 1.5 degrees, we've got 6% of insects, 8% of plants, 4% of vertebrates seeing their home ranges decline due to warming. At 2 degrees, we've got a big jump in the number of species that are endangered, 18%, 16%, and 8%. So we should really feel like our actions make a difference, even though we've already had some warming and already had some effects on our ecosystems. We can moderate that. So what can we do? Some of the personal things that we have found make the most difference are reducing food waste and eating a low carbon diet. Those are things that are quite impactful, in fact, on greenhouse emissions. Conserving energy and fuel in your daily lives by moderating your driving, by good home energy management. These things are important. But I think we also really want to emphasize thinking about systemic change in our energy system. And this is a good place for Marianne to take over and talk about what she has to share with Citizens Climate Lobby. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
And here I am. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Lori. It's an honor to walk in the tracks of Lori Anderson, well-known, wonderful speaker and wonderful scientist. I'm talking about the politics of this climate moment, and I will see if I can, there we go. Briefly, I'm going to touch on about Citizens Climate Lobby, the growing consensus on the need to act about climate change, talk about Congress, what's going on, what's going to move Congress, what we can do, and then introduce you, perhaps some of you know about Catherine Hayhoe, but if not, the delightful part of this program is to get to know Catherine Hayhoe a little bit. And a final word from Amanda Gorman. You may remember she was the poet who spoke at Joe Biden's inauguration. So getting started about Citizens Climate Lobby. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots advocacy organization focused on national policies to address climate change. Note that there are 593 chapters worldwide, 16 in Ohio, including Paris and Delaware. And we are laser focused on a national carbon fee and dividend. And you'll find out what dividend is shortly. Well, I'll just tell you now, the dividend is the proceeds of the carbon fee returned to households in equal shares, half for every adult, half share for each child.
Excuse me, Marianne.
Yeah.
I think your slides are not advancing.
Oh, well, they're not.
You need to maximize your screen.
What do I do?
Maximize your screen
How do I
in the
do
upper
that?
right-hand corner. The box in the upper right-hand corner, I think will do it.
No,
Also-
that won't affect it at all.
So Marianne, I think if the bottom right of your slides, there should
Yeah.
see a little thing to put it into presentation mode.
I
and
thought
that
I
may
did
work.
that. I thought I did that. Oh, wait, so what are you seeing? You're not seeing the slide?
We're seeing your slide, but then also the preview of each slide over on the left, kind of like the thumbnails of each slide.
Oh, I thought, okay, now that, let me try something. And now, still see it that way? Still see it that way? Well, I don't know what, I do not know what
But it did
moved.
advance there, so.
But slideshow format is what you need to put it in.
Okay, how do I find slideshow format? From here.
It's at the
Okay,
top.
there.
Yeah, there it is.
Right.
Yes, click on that.
Okay, I'm in slideshow format. And now,
Good.
Uh,
Well, go to slideshow again and click begin slideshow.
from
From
beginning,
Beginning.
okay. That work? Is that working?
We can still see the preview somehow,
Oh.
but
For crying out loud. Well, let me try it once more. I
Could be
thought-
presentation mode is thinking it's going to a different screen or something. If you have
yeah,
more
that's
than
true.
one.
It'll still work as long as
But-
you advance the slides though, because we were just stuck on the opening slide the whole time.
Okay, well, I'll.
So, yeah,
advance- Okay.
yeah, as
here
long
we
as you just
go.
click on it, we should be okay.
You have to, yeah, you'll have to click on the next, each one as you go
Yeah,
then.
okay, okay, well, we did that, okay, we did that, okay. You see a photo here?
Nope.
No photo. Oh,
Click on that slide.
Oh. I don't know how I can get out of this. screen. Let's see, Lori, can you pick
Have a
up
night.
on my slides and show my slides?
Yeah, I was thinking I can.
Yeah.
Let me do that. Hold on a second here.
And I can just say next slide.
That might work well, yeah.
Hold on a second.
You'll have to stop sharing.
Oh, I'll stop sharing, I'll stop my share.
Yes, please.
I apologize, folks.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Yeah, this will work fine. I'm working on it. And now I'm going to share my screen for Marianne's slides.
Okay.
Ta-da!
Ta-da. Okay, we've been there, we've been here. Next slide, next slide. Go back one. Okay. The carbon fee is what we are focused on. And we have a partner in that. The economists, the community of the economists, they've made a statement on carbon dividends. And this statement was promulgated by a group called the Climate Leadership Council, which is actually formed by secretaries of the Treasury, secretaries of a lot of government organizations, and as the best way to deal with the carbon problem. It's the signatories there are 3,600 and some signatories to this statement, including 40 from Ohio, chairs of the Federal Reserve, Nobel laureate economists, and former chairs of the Council of Economic Advisors. Next slide, please. And their statement, these are excerpts. Carbon tax offers the most cost-effective lever to reduce carbon emissions. Second, a consistently rising carbon price will encourage technological innovation and large-scale infrastructure development. Third, all the revenue should be returned directly to U.S. citizens through equal lump sum rebates. And it is believed that most families, 60% of Americans would come out ahead with the revenue that they get compared to the price rises. So, and the others, more than 60% of America, the other 40% are probably going to be able to handle that by their own economizing or their own income because they are more high income people. Next. So there's a growing consensus on the need to act against climate change. And generally, what you'll see here is that more than a majority, well more than a majority are worried about climate change. Some are very worried. A majority want the government to play a larger role in addressing climate change. About 2/3 say the federal government is doing too little. Importantly, younger Republicans, millennial and Gen Z Republicans, are more likely than older Republicans to think humans have a large role in climate change and that the federal government's doing too little, and we should be working on alternative energy sources. I did come across a poll this week that surprised me, and I haven't seen it highlighted anyplace else, but it was saying that Republicans concerned about climate change dropped in 2021, which seems strange, and I wondered whether this had to do with possible kind of anti-government and of the post January 6th movement growing to be against a lot of things, and whether that's making people just want to back off from any kind of action of any sort, I don't know. But there is that one poll. Okay, next. So what's going on in Congress right now? There's a reconciliation bill under discussion. You may know that the reconciliation bill deals with financial matters. It can be passed by a 50% by a majority. It does not need a 2/3 or a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Will climate action be part of that? We don't know, but we're hearing that Joe Manchin has said he believes climate should be part of the Reconciliation Act. And also we have to there's another senator who may be a problem getting that majority in the Senate, but at least we have Joe Manchin. It appears Congress is really busy now. Congress has the problems with the environment, well, with inflation, with the State of the Union address coming up. There's a lot of things going on. And I guess I have to say, one of the things that I'm most concerned about now is the effect on government action by the war in the Ukraine right now. We got a problem there because it's causing inflation, and whether that is going to completely collapse the any movement toward decarbonization remains to be seen. However, I think there's a very strong argument to be made that because of what's happening globally and the international flow of gas and oil, this is the time, in fact, 20 years ago was the time, that we need to be moving to clean energy so we don't fall into this trap. So that's something that I think needs to be dealt with very, very forcefully. There's one cheerful indicator is that the Growing Climate Solutions Act, pending in the House, because it passed in the Senate, passed by a vote of 92-8, and it was just basically carbon related, and it was nice that they got a 92-8 vote. Next one, there we go. Lori, I think you're using an earlier version of my talk. But we will move on. Something we can do right now is call our Congressman Troy Balderson at that number, or email him at his office. Tell him you're a constituent and a voter, and that action against climate change is a priority for you. Thank him for being a member of the House Climate Solutions Caucus. There is such a caucus. He is a member. I don't know how active he has been. I don't know how active the Climate Solutions Caucus itself has been, but he has signed up for that. So that is something you can thank him for. It's always good to thank the congressman. Ask him to vote in favor of the Growing Climate Solutions Act, and which is what we just referred to has passed the Senate. The bill provides critical support for clean energy and carbon capture, and will make the U.S. communities more resilient to extreme weather events. Call him or our senators whenever there's an important climate matter before Congress. Next, please. stay active and be hopeful. I wonder how many of us have been feeling overwhelmed, discouraged, backing off because of what we read about the serious damage that's going on to the climate and how vast it seems. There's some thoughts about that from people who've studied our state of mind now. Sarah Ray wrote this book, A Field Guide to Climate Anxiety, How to Keep Your Cool. And hope is the byproduct of action, not a prerequisite for it. Action leads to results, which foster hope, creating a virtuous cycle. And she's found that people inundated with information about the impacts of climate won't be inspired by hearing about a vague solution. They find encouragement in knowing they're not alone in their concern and can join others in fostering change. Next slide, please. So some actions we can take. Join or take action through social or environmental organizations. Take local action on the issues. And the Citizens Climate Lobby is not the only one, obviously not the only organization around. There are many local ones and state level ones, the Ohio Environmental Council, Stratford Ecological Center, Preservation Parks, the Nature Conservancy in Ohio, Renew Delaware. All these organizations have concerns and interests in and connections with the environment. If you're going to Stratford and your kids are going to camp there, you're growing environmentalists, and that's a very good thing. So Katharine Hayhoe is the author of Saving Us, a climate scientist's case for I've got a chat, there we go, that was in the way of reading this. Climate scientist's case for hope and healing in a divided world. So next slide, please. The most important thing you can do to fight climate change is to talk about it. Bad news warnings are more likely to make people check out than change their behavior. So you can't argue with somebody. I ask yourself as you sit there, have you ever had a productive conversation with somebody who needs to be educated about climate change? Have you ever had that argument come out successfully when you ended up arguing about it? Probably not. You start with her advice. You start with something you have in common, connect it to why climate change matters to us personally as individuals, and then move on to what people can do and fix it in smaller, large steps. So in other words, we relate to each other human to human, not government agency to government agency. And by bonding over the values we truly share and by connecting them to the climate, we can inspire one another to act to fix this problem. But again, don't stop talking to Congress. Next slide, please. There are two places where you can see Katharine Hayhoe talking in the media about what she has, these perceptions that she has. I can tell you, she is delightful. She is funny, she's sweet, she's energetic, and she has a lot of fans worldwide. She has a TED Talk, and if you just go to TED Talk, Katharine Hayhoe, it'll pull up this and one other TED Talk. She also appeared on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, and if you Google that, Jimmy Kimmel, Katharine Hayhoe, this will probably come up. So what, is there another slide here? Okay, these are sources and information. If you want a copy of this, you can email me and I can send you a copy of what I have that I put in this conversation. And I think that's it for this version. I have in another version, and I'm sorry that this didn't come up, but there are some wonderful pictures of Citizens Climate Lobby when we go to Washington, as we used to do every June for a 3-day conference. Didn't happen for the last 2 years because of COVID, but we meet with climate, and we meet with congressional offices, and we discuss the carbon fee and dividend. We talk about whatever's on their minds. And the last year we went, 2019, there are usually upwards of a couple thousand Citizens Climate Lobby people who go to these conferences in Washington. And that in 2019, we had meetings with the offices of 429 congressional offices, House and Senate, out of 435. So there were only 6 offices that didn't meet with us. Now, that's not to say that we got everybody to sign up for a carbon fee and dividend, but that's the kind of influence that we do have in Congress. And when we are hoping to have another Washington conference this June, assuming that we can do that in person. So that's where that's my message today. And I guess the key points are build from the ground up, build strength from the ground up, keep getting your message to Congress, our senators, Troy Balderson, if he remains our congressman, we don't know about that. And just keep working, keep your hopes up. That's all. That's the best thing we can do, is keep our hopes up. Thank you.
Okay, well, Marianne, thank you very much for that, and Lori as well. I love the phrase, hope is the byproduct of action. I think that is a very, very to the point and profound statement, truthfully. And I think both your talks today do a nice job at really highlighting the two aspects of this. We have to understand the science, but we also have to understand how do we put that into practice to affect some change.
Right.
So what we're going to do, thank you for that. We're going to turn this over to some Q&A, and we have a couple already here. For everyone out there, you're welcome over in the chat. We're at bottom right corner where it says type message here. Please feel free to put in any questions you have, or if you'd like to come on to microphone, you're welcome to come on to your microphone. We can start out here. It looks like a question perhaps for Lori from Skip, our chair, saying, using ice core samples, is it possible to measure various greenhouse gases going back historically? How is that done, and how does that demonstrate the dramatic rise in the level of these gases that we've seen?
Yeah, happy to answer that question. And I went and opened one of my lecture notes package when I saw that. So I'm going to share my screen again so we can see a graph that Skip is referring to. So these are ice core data from up to 800,000 years ago, looking at carbon dioxide through time. I'm going to increase the size of this so you can see it well. So we've got carbon dioxide on the y-axis, and the present day is actually over here at 0, and then you go back 800,000 years before present. And you can see carbon dioxide kind of bouncing between about 180 parts per million up to 250 going along. And then this is the 2020 average of 412. So the ice core data definitely show that we have the highest CO2 levels that we've seen in the last 800,000 years. And you do this measurement by basically collecting slices of ice core that you date very exactly and sucking the air bubbles trapped in the ice out of the slice of core. And you do that under vacuum. So you basically kind of vacuum the core to suck in the air bubbles that are trapped. And you look at their carbon dioxide concentration. So that's how it's done. And it's a well-supported method for looking at past greenhouse gas concentrations.
And if people aren't familiar, the Bird Polar and Climate Research Center at OSU actually is one of the leading repositories for these ice cores. I don't think you can just do like a private tour of that. It's kind of, but from time to time, they do have tours, and it's a great resource that's right here in our area.
Absolutely. Good point, Bob.
Great, thank you for both of those. And another question for you, Lori, from one of our guests, Glenn Bengson, says, is the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming that we talk about, does that mean maintaining the present temperature we've experienced up to today, or is that talking about 1.5 degrees Celsius increase every year, or how would you give us some clarification on what we talk about when we
Right.
talk about that?
So what we've experienced now is since about 1850, we've experienced an average temperature rise for the whole Earth of 1 degree Celsius. That's what we've experienced so far. And that is the average for the entire Earth. Now, if you look at the Earth and go to different places on the Earth, you actually find that some areas have warmed substantially more than just 1 degree. For example, the Arctic has warmed more like 2 to 2.5 degrees. And then there's some other places that are a little cooler. In other words, they have not warmed as much, but on average for the whole globe, it's 1 degree. And basically the modeling that people have done trying to predict what will happen as we warm the Earth indicate that if we go up to 1.5 on average total, we will see, these kinds of changes. If we go another additional degree up to 2 on average for the entire Earth, we'll see these kinds of changes. And it differs from place to place. For example, some of the low-lying islands in the Pacific are already basically unlivable because of sea level rise that's associated with the current increase in global temperature. And what I was really wanting to emphasize is that, like Marianne said, some people use this as kind of an excuse to say, well, it's already happening, let's not take action. But it really matters, I think, not warming too much. If we can control the warming into a reasonable range, the effects on our environment will be less severe. So
I would like to jump in here and just point out that 1.5 degrees doesn't sound like a lot, but the baseline is only 13 degrees above freezing. So you're talking about a significant percentage of the global climate above having a planet that's totally frozen. And, that makes it a huge percentage change, especially over time.
right, that's a good point, Dave. And part of the way I illustrate it too is, you might say it's a very small change, but you can see the effects. The effects are just completely obvious. Even though it seems small, there is a strong response to these kinds of warming events that we see in terms of increased fire, rising sea levels, changing precipitation patterns, and then, a lot of other kinds of side effects of that warming.
Just to throw in too, it's important to remember too that sea level, when it rises even say an inch on a global scale, that has really large effects moving inland because of the way land is sloped along the seashore. So you're talking about a large displacement of human populations from even small sea level rise as well. And that's also part of the issue, the impacts. So I don't see any questions yet in the chat. Please put in your questions if you have any, or come on. I will have a question here to get us started with. Question for Marianne, for you, Marianne. I was wondering if you might be able to give us a little more insight into your thoughts on the following. Is people talk about carbon taxes, a carbon market, and kind of a market-based solution. But I know sometimes you also have critics that say that's not addressing the root cause of the problem, which is the very fact that we have an economy built on consumption and production and constant growth. How do you respond to critics that might say carbon markets and carbon taxes are not the solution?
Well, they are the solution in the sense that when the system keeps raising the price, Then, okay, the fee would be imposed at the wellhead or the mine, and it would start at $15 a metric ton, and it would rise $10 in predictable increments after that. Obviously, the carbon industry is going to pass that on into the economy, and thus the economy, in a sense, takes the hit. But industry can decarbonize too. You get a company like a company can figure out ways to use less carbon and outcompete the company that doesn't use less carbon, and therefore they save money. But then they pass it on. Some of the price is going to be passed on to households, and that's where the fee comes in, because the fee will help households manage the rising prices. And the fee will go up as the increments of cost of carbon imposed at the mine go up. The more money is collected, and that money is also returned to households. So households kind of can keep pace with the increasing cost of carbon.
Okay,
Um,
thank you. Now,
Can
are
I
there
say
any
something?
states or cities where this is already being implemented, carbon regimes or carbon trading or anything like that?
I don't know whether there's any that have been so systematically. I think one of the British Columbia states has a carbon fee. Oregon tried it, but there's nothing kind of economy-wide that this would have to be.
Okay, thank you.
European
So
Union also has carbon pricing, and they're talking about moving toward putting on a border fee where other countries trying to import into the European Union starting in like 2030 would face a penalty if they don't have the same level of carbon pricing. So yeah, the European Union is another good example.
Yeah, and that's a very important point, because part of the carbon fee and dividend, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act that is now in Congress, part of that does provide for a border adjustment, where if a product wants to come into the US and has not been paying a carbon fee, they pay that fee at the border when the product comes into the US. And likewise, if a carbon a product that has been taxed is going out to a country where it has to compete with products that have not been taxed, that US company gets the rebate. So it's meant to equalize trade, but when you think of a product that's made without a carbon fee and it's going to be imported in the US where it's going to be taxed, that country is going to think, wait, why should we let the US collect this money? Why don't we collect this money right here at home and impose a fee there? But yes, the European Union is working very, very well in that direction. Let me, since I've got the microphone here for a second, there was one thing I wanted in my most updated version. I wanted to add one note or one quote from Amanda Gorman. Probably many of you remember seeing her at President Biden's inauguration. This is another poem that she wrote called Earthrise. And this is not the whole poem, which is actually quite short. This is about half of it. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is our home, to use your unique power to give the next generation the planet they deserve.
I think that gets very well to a comment in the chat over there by Mike Casto, who's seeing in Iowa, where there's state legislation that is trying to prevent the building of solar arrays on agricultural lands. And so it's a good reminder that we all have a place and a part we can play in trying to affect change.
Yeah, in fact, there is, did you say Iowa?
Yeah, I believe it was in Iowa City, right?
Well, in fact,
Yes.
there is legislation, there has just been legislation passed in Ohio to prevent or to hinder the installation of solar fields in unincorporated areas. And that will be coming in front of the county commissioners. It's a complex law, but the county commissioners will have a decision to make about whether to, in a sense, leave the gate open for that or to make it more difficult. And so there are solar arrays in Ohio. Some of them they're doing very well. But this new move toward by the state legislature to make it harder for solar commercial utility grade solar, I'm talking about utility size solar, to get established in Ohio is something we need to watch when it comes in front of the county commissioners.
My understanding about the Iowa law is that it targets government agencies, that is municipalities who want to establish a solar array to provide a solar resource for their own power in their particular community. I know that is happening in lots of communities around the country. And here the argument is that all of the Iowa land is used for agriculture, and that we need to keep it for agriculture. If we allow these massive solar arrays to go in that take up perhaps even hundreds of acres of land, then that really reduces the productivity from an economic point of view, as well as reduces Iowa's impact on providing food for the rest of the country and other places. One of the particular things about this that strikes me as interesting in this state is that when you just look at an old-fashioned map, a paper map of Iowa, you see that there seem to be many, many more small towns in Iowa than there are in Ohio. It's like Indiana when you look at a map. And I suspect part of what's going on is that small communities like this probably, especially if they had some governmental help, would be able to raise the money needed to install a solar array just for their community. And that would, of course, spread throughout the state. And that's what they're really trying to object to. My real question, though, is this, it seems like this is not what we want to be doing. I understand that food is important, but it seems to me that we want to be finding ways to facilitate the growth of renewable energy sources in order to address the issue of higher carbon levels, rather than make it more difficult for alternative energy. Am I right or wrong about that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. The argument in Ohio has become the farmers are saying, but Ohio's law mostly targets unincorporated areas, farms. So a lot of farmers are saying, wait a second, you can't do this to us. We're farmers. But a lot of farmers are saying, wait a second, I'm due to retire before too long. And if I want to get extra money from leasing out 100 acres or 80 acres to a utility level solar installer, I should be able to do that. There's arguments about, this is my choice. And some people want to choose to have to lease some of their land to a utility solar project, because they'll earn more money from this utility project than they're making from their farm. And so that becomes an argument. And also the solar community, the solar array will in fact pay more taxes than farmland does. And a lot of those taxes are going to go to rural school districts. and, you know, show me a rural farmish country school district that doesn't need more money.
Right.
And so that's a big deal. So they're going to be people, an energetic argument on all sides of this when it comes here in Delaware County to the commissioners in Delaware County.
There is
Thank
an
you.
interesting dimension also of preserving land. I mean, I can see that there are some impacts of a solar array, but I guess I'd also like to put forth, I've heard of some really interesting solar arrays over parking lots. I mean, everybody likes to park their car in the shade. And if you put a solar panel, people can park underneath. And I think we should be looking at some of those creative solutions too, rather than just assuming we're going to consume land.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. But in terms of the farmland, a lot of these leases are for like 40 years, and the installers do not rip up the land. They do not destroy the land. They put in posts for putting the array on top, but there are crops you can grow under a solar array. And at the end of 40 years or whenever the lease is up, they take it away and the land is still there.
Yeah.
Can I say something? The other thing I think that is really telling is that the oil companies are now investing in developing alternative energy. Lithium batteries, solar, and so forth. They don't talk about that much, but they see the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in here with our host Skip has had something happening in his house, and so he's had to step away. But we are a little past the top of the hour, so to respect our presenters' times, we do need to wrap up for the day. But let me just end by just saying thank you again to Lori Anderson and Marianne Gabel for the discussion today, and for all of you for the really good, thoughtful comments and questions, and the robust discussion. It's why we do this, is to bring these issues down here to the Main Street level, if you will, to get these discussions going with all of us. And so I appreciate it. So next Friday, just as a reminder, we will do this again at noon for the second in our series. So I hope you can all join us. And please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we can do to answer any questions you have.
Will the video be available, Aaron?
Yes, we are recording. We will be making that available. I know on our Great Decisions Facebook page, and I'll talk with Skip Cornett, but my guess is we can probably email it out to all the people who registered as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll make sure, make a note of that. All right, well, thank you everyone, and hope you have a nice day.
Thanks for coming.
The next discussion is on Russia with Steve Tull. And he's previously resident and humanitarian coordinator at the United Nations, but it's on Russia, and that should be really, really interesting too.
Thank you for that, Corinne. I couldn't find my notes. So that is true. It is on Russia. That'll be very timely.
And he's an expert.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Stay safe out there and have a great day, everyone.